Well, a lot has happened, Carlo, since we last talked on Retention Zone in the world and in the world of, let's say, streaming, media, entertainment, sports, news, what have you.
Hi, everybody, for this episode of Retention Zone, the video podcast focused on streaming monetization and retaining customers. I have the pleasure to have with me again, Christy Tanner. Hi, Christy.
Hi, Carlo. It's great to be back.
Yeah, she was in episode 25. And as we met recently and discussed a few things, I noticed that there were many things that was different or updated from when we did the episode back then. So the idea is, sometimes we say things and we predict, and it's kind of a shot in the dark, and nobody would ever come back and check if what we predicted or expected or, the scenarios we saw were happening or not. So it's good to have Christy back to tell me a bit what she was doing in the last month, and especially some updates that are meaningful for what we're discussing in this podcast.
Well, a lot has happened, Carlo, since we last talked on Retention Zone in the world and in the world of, let's say, streaming, media, entertainment, sports, news, what have you. I have always thought that this sector changes every quarter, and we've been through almost 2 quarters now since we last talked, and we've had 2 quarters of pretty significant changes. In terms of what I'm doing, I'm Christy Tanner. I have been in the world of media, entertainment, technology, and streaming for 2 decades now. And it started when I was running TV Guide and Hulu and Netflix were launching, and we were trying to help people figure out what to watch. And I sold TV Guide to CBS, where I then launched and ran 12 different streaming channels, including a live streaming news channel, 12 local versions of our local news channels, along with a sports channel. And we did this in a time when there wasn't even an acronym called FAST. We were doing free ad-supported TV, but people hadn't decided to use that acronym yet. After leaving CBS, I became a consultant. I've consulted for BBC, outside PBS, and for some startups. And I recently took on an even bigger role at a startup that I've been advising called Swerve Sports. So Swerve started out as a sports fast channel about 3 years ago. And our first channel evolved from a general sports channel, men and women, any sport, to focusing on combat sports, because those were what were performing. And Swerve has now become the #1 combat sports streaming channel. After pivoting to combat 18 months ago, Swerve went from #7 to #1. And you might be surprised to hear that there are 7 or more.
Would you remember who is number 2?
On combat. What do I mean by combat?
Would you remember? No. Would you remember what number 2 and 3 or the other are?
No.
Just for everybody.
We don't know, because we're told you're #1 by platforms, but they don't tell you. Yeah, there are no measured stats. This was true. This was true 6, 7, 8 years ago, almost 10 years ago, when we were starting CBS News live streaming channel called CBSN. People would, the big platforms would come and tell us, "Oh, you're #1, you're #2, you're doing great." We'd never. The lack of statistics continues in this area, but Swerve Combat had performed so well, Carlo, that we were asked to start a sports streaming channel focused on women's sports. That happened in the spring. So some people would point to the runaway success of Caitlin Clark in the in college basketball and now obviously in the WNBA. I think sort of a lot of factors are converging. For us at Swerve, we were simultaneously asked to create a women's sports channel because there's demand for advertising inventory and also for the content around women's sports. So the demand is there. But the second piece of it is for us and our team, and why we decided to do it, is that in the spring, around the time you and I were first talking, Swerve Combat had launched women's primetime combat night focus on Tuesdays.
Yeah.
And what we found is that the women's night performed better than every other night of the week. So we had women's combat sports on Swerve outperforming men's combat sports. And combat's defined as everything from MMA to wrestling to boxing and more.
Yeah. And that was because normally combat is, there's the big thing, and then in this case it's a continuous stream of content, obviously. I mean,
yes. And so in launching a women's streaming sports channel, it's not combat focused. It's everything from cheerleading to basketball to soccer to volleyball, gymnastics, and everything in between. I think the way that we're looking at it right now is that we want to aggregate the top athletes, have the best competitions, and showcase the biggest rivalries in the world of sports.
And how difficult is to acquire rights? On how you approach acquiring rights, which in some case can be
that's a great question. So first off, we have been really efficient in running Swerve Combat. So we're not looking to compete in the broadcast arena for sports rights right now. It's early days in FAST, and we want to walk before we run in terms of overspending on rights at a time when the audience in FAST remains limited, and let's face it, it grows somewhat in line with people purchasing new devices and or signing on to new services.
And do you have an identikit? Do you know who these people watching FAST and especially your channel are? Because we know data is not like as in OTT in the case of FAST, right?
I would say we have a lot of really educated guesses. We get very little data from the distributors and platforms, and everybody's in the same boat. They really have walled gardens when it comes to data, and they're using it for ad targeting, and they want to retain the volume for targeting for themselves. Mm-hmm. I think this ends up being a self-defeating approach over time, because as a programmer who cares about creating great content, it's extremely challenging to program a channel without adequate data about who's watching and why.
And so
I think there needs to be some growth in the industry there.
And in terms of success for you means if more platform want your content, more your channels, correct? Or how much they're open to pay? Maybe, I don't know.
Success is going to come on a few different fronts. Number one, we want to partner with leagues and their athletes to showcase their sports. In many cases, women's sports are not being seen. They're not available to be seen. So I would say some of the leagues are really fighting for economic survival. Not all of them, but when you get down to the sports that aren't as easily monetized or that don't have the air cover of a really strong league, some of those sports have incredible athletes that we only see every 4 years because they compete in the Olympics. And there are, however many, whatever that is, 3 years and 11 months when they're training or competing, and the fans of those sports don't get to see them. And we want to make that a lot more accessible to the audience of fans who are out there. So in terms of who's watching, I think it varies from platform to platform, Carlo. So if you bought a more expensive brand of TV, let's say a Samsung TV, you are probably a different demographic than somebody, a different economic demographic than somebody who bought a Roku enabled TCL TV in wherever you bought it. I think that's one indicator. We don't know necessarily, but we can see differences among platforms.
Okay.
In terms of the types of sports that perform. I wouldn't say we have enough data to be scientific or to make pronouncements, but we do see different behaviors on different platforms. That was also true when I was running digital for CBS News. That's one way to look at it. Another way to look at it is just, this is still a nascent space. It's still growing. It's going to take another step up during the holiday season, when everybody buys new connected TVs, as they do every year, and things will shift. But one thing that we do know from research that's out there is that fans of women's sports are more or less equally male and female. It's amazing how much we run into the misconception that,
yeah, I agree,
fans of women's sports are all women. And so but the research is out there, and as we know, for men's sports, it breaks down a little bit more, maybe 60-40, depending on the sport.
Yeah. No, that's an interesting one. But one thing that I don't know, and I wanted to ask, do you currently have or plan to have at some point a direct-to-consumer OTT service?
I would say at the moment, that's not something that we're focused on. You mean an SVOD service, like a subscription?
Yeah.
Not at this time. Not at this time. And I think we're really focused on fast. We all bring it. Our team from Swerve. The founder came from Roku and founded many of its best practices there. Other members of our team have more than a decade of experience in streaming, and were among the fast pioneers. And we're really interested in free and ad-supported TV. So a lot of us do have experience with SVOD platforms, and it's not for a lack of interest. I think this is where we thought we could have the most positive impact on the space. And I think for myself, that's very much the case. I think that the world of fast channels for many years has been maybe where some of the content owners saw it as an extra monetization opportunity, as opposed to a place where they could create and showcase the best content and programming and really deliver a great service to consumers. And so I guess I don't want to be I don't want to seem condescending at all, but I think that there are some channels out there that are just places where people are sort of burning off library content, or set it and forget it. We have a show that was popular in the 70s. Let's create a whole fast channel devoted to it that nobody asked for and nobody will actually watch. And I think that the people who are using fast, who have cut the cord, or who are sort of cord shavers and are looking for free programming that's as great as what they're used to on over-the-air broadcast programming. This is especially true in the States. I mean, it's really what we're talking about here. Well, let me just say, there are good fast channels, and quality is obviously in the eye of the beholder. But I think there are some that are delivering really great service, whether it's in the news space, in the sports space, and in the entertainment space. And I think there are some that really shouldn't be distributed because they're not. Nobody cares. It's very obvious when you watch them that the people who are behind them don't have high standards and aren't really thinking about delivering a great consumer experience.
Because I think if I summarize my my view of the ecosystem, what you're saying is there are different options as VOD, cable, especially in the US. No, it's a bit different in Europe, but similar.
Yeah.
There are now obviously a lot of SVOD has become also a mix of hybrid AVOD, etc., with different layers, etc. But also, so FAST as a place in the ecosystem, because there are people that want to watch like that, especially because it's free, etc. Maybe even because it's linear. I have big doubts. So when I saw FAST the first time, I was not happy. I saw it as a going back, right, to all linear and not using the tools that we have in digital. But I think there is a place for a lot of these options. The question may be the sustainability of all these different options, not from a consumer point of view, which is why there are many options, I think, because people are trying to either cut, shave, or not have 17 like I have subscription and pay for them all. They're finding alternative ways. I think also different part of the population have a different approach to media consumption. But from the media company and the platform behind it, I think in the next few years we will see maybe everything survives and they all live together and are sustainable. But I think there will be big changes in the next few years. This is my reading of it.
Since we last talked, the holding company called Chicken Soup for the Soul that was maintaining the Redbox and Crackle services went under, and there was some valuable stuff there, but that I think we're going to see others go under. We're already seeing fast platforms be more selective about the channels that they choose to carry. I think they could go a step farther, but some of the reasons that maybe they're a bit too crowded right now are that they did long-term deals with some channels that maybe they wish they hadn't. And then I think also maybe in some respects, some of the owners of those services need to stop thinking about their service as a place to market everything else they're doing. If that makes sense. So
yeah.
They need to be able to stand alone. And I should say also, Swerve is not only distributed in FAST. That is a big area of focus. But we are in DirecTV, Sling, and Fubo. Okay. So you can find us behind paywalls.
And in terms of leagues, if I look for a perspective from a league perspective, maybe being also on fast channel, which I think at some point but it's again the question: should the league have their own fast channel, or should they come with what you call yourself, an aggregator? Sorry, I don't know.
Depends on how much programming they have to offer. So, and this isn't advice to the WNBA, but just the WNBA plays live game. Their season is 4 months.
Yeah.
So the way that league runs, the NBA is live the other 8 months. So they can promote the WNBA during the NBA season. They can promote NBA. That probably makes sense for them, and they probably have enough that warrants a robust channel. Same goes for the NFL.
Mhm.
That said, anybody can create a fast channel. So the question is, should everybody do it? First of all,
Exactly.
no, definitely don't do it if you can't support it and have it be competitive and a showcase of excellence for your league. And it's expensive, and it's a specialty. So it's, just piping a feed into a bunch of distribution outlets is not maybe the best showcase for a sport and its athletes. I think if you have the funds to invest to make it, something that meets the high standards of your sport, then yes. But I don't think it needs to be a priority for a league to create a fast channel or even an SVOD service. And certainly the biggest leagues are doing very well with their broadcast rights and now their streaming deals. But the smaller leagues are, I think, they're almost competing in a different realm, Carlo.
Yeah.
In that also with what's called in the U.S. the NIL rules changing for athletes. Some of those smaller sports, whether they're in the college level or the professional level, the league or the governing body is in some ways competing with the individual athletes and their social accounts. And they not all have found a way to make that harmonious. So as a fan of a sport, I think you probably want more of a 360 view. You don't want to just see individual athletes' social feeds and their workout routines and what they're showing from events. You want to see well-produced sports events, and that all takes money and investment.
And I think just maybe to end on something that is familiar to you, maybe the importance of programming, which for us digital guys doesn't mean a lot, but for linear means almost everything, plus the quality of the content pieces, obviously. That's the real trick for having a fast channel that, makes sense to people.
Well, look, for me, in terms of when we started out talking about what's changed since we last talked, and one thing that really strikes me is that I think with all the layoffs and the chaos in the media and technology industry right now, I think anybody who's in the media industry who is creating or distributing content needs to ask themselves why they're doing this. Because if you really don't care about culture, programming, showcasing great athletes, bringing trusted news to the public, why did you get into the media business? Why are you if you're a technology person enabling streaming and you're really good at it, that's great. But if you don't care about what you're putting out into the world, then go do something else. I think that's my. I think we all need to be asking some tough questions, because there are some news channels, there are some entertainment channels, there are some sports channels that they're bringing us all down. They're bringing the whole streaming industry down because the people behind them are not delivering excellence.
Yeah, which means you also have even stronger competition from social, where it's already playing on a different field. But if you want the quality, the care on this side, there's almost no reason not to stay just on social. Maybe, I don't know, but that's a cry for purpose, I would say. Correct, to end the episode.
It's a cry for excellence. It's a cry for and I think sports is a great analogy. Yeah, anyone can get on the track and run in the Olympics, but everybody can't win. Let's not be Ray Gun in the in the breakdancing competition. Let's not do that. Let's be Simone Biles.
Yeah,
And
that's a
not
good
Reagan.
example. Va bene. Thank you, Christy. It's good to also understand better the world of fast, which is for me still, I have still to learn a lot. I have learned today, as I expected, that data sharing and data usage is still underperforming. So that's something I think the industry should work on.
That's been true since I started. It will that will probably be true in 6 months if we talk again.
Va bene. Ciao, Christy. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.